The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Derek.Krebs and I'll be presenting today's session on Microsoft Manager Porter. This is just one of several in our educational series, so welcome one and all. I see a lot of familiar faces over the years and some new ones. And today's session is just going to give you a nice little crash course and tips and tricks on Manager Porter. And it's titled our top 10 features. So let me introduce myself first, and then I'll just do a little bit of house cleaning and a couple of PowerPoint slides, only for about maybe the first 3 to 5 minutes, but the bulk of the time we're going to be looking at inside the application. Well, on this first slide, it might be a couple fold. One is, please jot my email down because I want to be a nice little information source for you. So if you have any questions today, I would like you to take advantage of the questions area within the GoToWebinar control panel, which you'll then see there to the right. If that window is blocking your view, you can minimize it. Okay, welcome back everybody. My sincere apology. Over the last couple of minutes, the power just went out here on a rare case here in California where I reside, so it's not hurricane related. Hopefully it's not fire related, but we have had some nearby ones, so please excuse that interruption, but we still have the remaining 50 minutes of this hour session to share with you some nice little tips and tricks of Manager Porter. So let me go ahead and continue with that nice little overview. I'm only going to spend just a couple minutes in PowerPoint. So let me return to it as I was diagnosing what was going on. My name is Derek.Krebs. I'm a senior consultant with the MSX Group, and a little bit of our background. If we turn the clock back 25 years, our entire team and founding members of MSX Group, we started at FRX Software. We had a great budgeting reporting tool, so good that Microsoft acquired us, and we internally worked at Microsoft, going on about 15 years of those 25 years. So we helped develop, implement, support those flagship products of FRX Forecaster and Manager Porter, which I'll be sharing the latter with you today. And then 10 years ago, we got spun off, and our focus now still is helping all of you customers on these Microsoft legacy products. And 10 years ago, we released to the market the Prospero application that's replacing those. I'll have a few more words to that on what I sort of call the product roadmap and release of Manager Porter and its predecessor now, Prospero. And I always like to say I'm the consultant here, so I'm going to share with you a lot of the experiences I've had over these 25 years helping hundreds of customers. So again, welcome one and all. We do have a nice audience today. Again, everybody is in mute, so please take advantage of that questions area that I'll try to field some at the tail end of today's phone call. If you're a little shy and being a sponge absorbing the material, that's why I want you to maybe jot down my email, because it might be multifaceted and advantages I'll have for you down the road. One is just ask me any question down the road, reporting or budgeting related. Secondly, as a thank you and benefit from joining today's session, if you're shy and maybe some of these questions might be more granular, if so later when we have our question and answer to end today's phone call, I might politely said, oh, let's take this offline and maybe even let's look at your report scenario you're describing, because it might get a little bit more detailed. So one takeaway would be a free 1-hour consulting session for those attending or viewing this recording. We'll be glad one of our team members to follow up with you individually and personally. Maybe third and finally is, as we're focusing on Manager Porter today, there is a very nice, long and robust training and user guides, which our team actually helped author during those years we worked at Microsoft. So if you do not have that library of training and user guides, please email me and I'll be sure to provide you a link where you can then refer to those in the future. As I continue just for another moment or two in PowerPoint, today's agenda, I'm just going to give a very quick little overview of Manager Porter because some of the attendees might not have no prior experience of knowledge of application. So I'll just give my little 2-minute tutorial of its product features and functionalities. We'll talk next about sort of what releases are currently out there, upcoming and updates to at least be aware of. And obviously the highlight of today is sharing with you my favorite top 10 features to improve your reporting, distribution, analysis. I call it the easy button we're going to bring to that process. And again, the question and answer flow. Take advantage of that, please. All right, so for those that are new and blue to Manager Porter, what it is, yes, is a nice financial reporting tool where it grabs data from your general ledger database. It's now only focused on the Microsoft Dynamics suite, like Great Plains, Exapta, Navision, and Solomon. However, when I mentioned the new release Prospero interfaces with 20 plus ERP systems out there, so I could rattle off a ton, and we're even adding some weekly and monthly. So those are some differences. I'll maybe throw out a couple there. Within Manager Porter, it will do all of your general ledger reporting. So in our demonstration company, we might have multi-companies. Secondly, we might have some different segments or dimensions like location, department, and account. So we can easily report off of what, again, I call general ledger data. However, one of my top 10 will be how I can grab data from Excel, meaning non-general ledger data. Units, headcount, anything unimaginable are some examples. Some obviously the benefits of Manager Porter. We always say it's a product created by accountants for accountants, so we don't need IT or a costly consultant to help us out. We have an easy row, column, or tree approach to it. That speeds up our month-end and analysis of our financial data for shorter implementation cycles and month-end closes. And let me just repeat that when we do create and work with a report inside Manager Porter, especially as a power user, what we'll call a designer, you simply have 3 building blocks. Every report needs a row and a column, and then the tree is optional. And what's great is you can mix and match these. So I might have one income statement row format that I'm using for 10 different reports. They might vary by the different columns, like one report might be actual versus budget. A second report might use that same row, but a different column. And then here's a graphic to that, like in blue, the row I was just describing. Then in red, my column, like month and year to date. And third building block, and maybe a 3-dimensional we'll see inside the application, is our reporting tree, like breaking it out by departments. And then I can easily mix and match, meaning that row there in blue. I can then easily reuse that and simply use a different column for a second report that I'll call actual versus budget. So there's one little visual of these reusable building blocks that probably is common knowledge for most of you, but I'll again probably start to wind us down. I'll share this PowerPoint with you later, so I'm going to start to wind down because I don't want to bore you with PowerPoints, but it just talks about some of the business benefits of different people in your organization, like how about you, the power users in accounting, normally who I'm talking with, or maybe those people in IT. And let me just finish by going through these couple of slides that I'll again pass on to you. And let's talk now briefly regarding what's historically been there and the future. Well, the latest, greatest release is called Manager Porter 2012. Microsoft used to come out with quarter releases every single quarter of not only bug fixes, but new features. But unfortunately, Microsoft's no longer developing and service packing and supporting that. So mainstream support based on your general ledger version might have already ended or soon might be based again on your GL version that Microsoft has what they call the product support lifecycle. And the last release was back in 2017 of Manager Porter. Now, any of you using the Microsoft Forecaster application on the budgeting side, the latest release is version 7.0 Service Pack 5 and something similar. It's been probably about 4 to 5 years since a Service Pack on it. And finally, FRX, that is even the much older reporting product that Manager Porter replaces. So FRX has not been on mainstream support by Microsoft going on close to 8 years. However, we still, since we're a lot of the same support and team members from FRX and Microsoft, we still support hundreds of users today on those products. So rest assured, the product's not going to blow up on you like some might mention. We'll be around to help you on that, hence this educational series. Now, one further note is if any of you are in the Microsoft Dynamics family, considering moving to Dynamics 365, Microsoft basically just took the same Manager Porter product and plugged it into the Dynamics 365. So yes, you can still use it. However, Microsoft did remove a couple of the features away, even some of my top 10 lists. So one little takeaway is I'll email you each personally that maybe registered or attended today. I'll give you a little thank you. I'll send you this PowerPoint slide. And additionally, I'll send you where this recording can later be viewed by you or others. So without further ado, I'm going to now look at the highlight you came to see, the product. And here is for our top 10 features. Let me just close out one slide and go back to one of the original ones here that we had. All right, bear with me just one moment here. I have also in Excel flavor some of the notes I'm now going to pull up here. So give me just a second for that here to set some of the stage. All right. Because I did have one slide open, but during the power outage, I actually closed some of my files that I had on some online linkage too. So let me go ahead and retrieve it. But in the meantime, to keep sort of continuity of today's session, excuse that again, lapse of the power outage in that one file here. And then I'm going to have to remote into one of our servers secondly here as well. Now, let me first of all mention of the top 10. The first of those top 10, my favorite, is the reusable rows, columns, and trees. What we're looking at right now is a completed report, like an income statement. And this is what I call the viewer. There's actually two flavors to the viewer: a web viewer, which we're currently looking at, so any browser. And secondly, let me go briefly to what I call the client viewer. Now this latter, the client viewer, has a little bit of different navigation for you power users, meaning here in the lower left, I'm looking at the report date of one report, but I'm going to come now here to the report library, where this is basically where you can store and archive your reports in different folders that might be date driven, like these different years, or group driven by board of directors, CFO, manager, etc., or maybe report driven like balance sheets, income statements. So possibilities are endless here. I'm going to save some of my clicks here that sometimes I'm tempted to as more of a trainer, but I'm going to keep this a little bit more abbreviated. I'm going to come back here to the report data. And once again, this is the client viewer. And I would even recommend, as you power users, to use the client viewer and not the web viewer. Maybe two reasons why, or three I'm thinking of. One is with the client viewer, you get the administration of the different folders, and what you can do is for each of these folders, there's also a bullet point of the top 10 features of secure electronic report distribution. And let me go ahead and just share with you briefly so I can check this off my list, that we have really security that you can easily do in one of two ways when you're distributing your reports. One way is what we call folder security. The second is what we call tree security. Let me show you briefly folder security. I'm in this report library. How about I have for my folder for board of directors, they only get to see certain reports like balance sheet and cash flow that most other people do not. So any one of these folders, if you are an administrator, you can right mouse click for the report library permissions. And what's going to pull up is a nice little window where here you can click on the add button, and then you're going to see different users like Bob or Sally, I'll call this as, or you might have groups you create, like here's my accounting group. Once you choose a user and or group, at minimum, yeah, usually everybody would view that you add. However, if it's someone else in the accounting department that I trust with maintenance of these reports to edit, create, or delete them over time, be aware of these little check marks. Otherwise, usually people outside of accounting, I usually turn that off and they view only the reports that I output to these respective folders. That again is what we call folders level security. And just to repeat that little phrase and click, I am in the client viewer in this library, as you see there in the lower left, and I right mouse clicked for the report library permission. Now, secondly, Let me come up here inside the report data. One thing that I favor inside the client viewer is I get better graphics. So here's a report where we're using a reporting tree, where I want to emphasize one report, but I can easily break it down by different companies, location, departments, utilizing my reporting tree, which I'll segue in to look at those little specifics behind the scenes. Versus in the client viewer, I tease myself for being lazy. I'd rather do less clicks. And the web viewer I returned to, if it's using a tree, I have to do one click to see the units of the tree. And notice here, I only see about 10 units of the tree. Oftentimes you have trees that are larger, so I have to scroll up and down. And also, I do not see nice little yellow folders that give me groupings of maybe division, departments, and companies. They're just indented, which again, I'm old school. My eyes are aging. And if I go back to the client viewer, that's why, yes, I like these folder views. And then if I had a multi-layer tree, it's much more visual and comprehensible. And finally, last little advantage I like is I get more real estate room inside these reports. I can expand them more readily, and then I can easily more export these to Excel. And speaking of, that's one of also the main bullet points here. That is, I can easily further disseminate this data. Well, one thing is, I usually have all of you, let's call you my managers that I'm sending these financials to. These are all reports stored in one SQL database on your servers, which translated another way means it's secure, electronic, real-time, including not only that folder security, but I'm also going to show you tree security here in just a moment. Now, within this viewer that I'm currently at, when I clicked on the Excel export button, if your report was ran with additional detail levels like account and transaction level, yes, you have much more options here within the client viewer, but in the web viewer, you do not see the same type of window where you have much more controls and options when either exporting or printing. And that'd probably be the little final advantage that I would have for using this client viewer. And before I forget, let me now return to the report designer. That's where you're going to spend most of your life as a power user. And I'm going to open up one of my reports here, the same one we were just looking at using a tree. And within the designer, and where you define to the system which viewer you prefer, like the web viewer or client viewer, is found under Tools, Options. When I come inside this window, this little checkbox is normally turned off. If it's turned off, and if I were then to generate the report, it would be output to the web viewer. But if I turn this on, that means I then will output to the client viewer. And just one little repeat of that, I'm in the designer application. I went under Tools, Options, and definitely I recommend turning this on to use the client viewer. All right, returning back to my client viewer, another advantage is I can easily drill down to the account and transaction level, including vendor or customer. I'm currently looking at my income statement, looking at all departments, but I might be a user that only has a certain unit of the tree. So for an example, when I open up this report, maybe Derek only can see administration, or maybe Sally can only see service. There's another verbal to what we call tree security. And I'll show you inside the product where you say Bob or Sally can see this unit. Now for the drill down, I'm going back to this top summary unit, and let's call it of all departments or companies that you might be in your tree. And when I first drill into a certain line of this report, what it's going to do is it's going to take me down to the next level of the tree. So I'm just drilling randomly into my benefits line, and it does not matter where I'm on that row. Now, if I began on the summary unit of the tree and drilled in, this is my next level of the tree for those departments that have data. I could then next go to what we call the account level detail. And then here is our general ledger segments, like the first 3-digit department, the middle characters are account, and these last 2 digits are a project. We call this account level detail. And you might see more than one line here, depending on how summarized this line might be. And third and finally, after this account level detail, yes, you can run your report with transaction level. And notice when I drill into this transaction level, these additional columns just got added that were not previously in the report. Now, usually I have some nice little cool things like the vendor or customer this was received from, but I just drilled into a benefit line that was driven from my payroll system, so I don't have a lot of fun here. And what I'm doing, just to clarify, is I'm just clicking on this back button on the toolbar. I'm closing away from the transaction and tree levels I was in, and let's go to a second example, utilities. I'm on the top summary report. Notice the heading called All Departments. I drill in anywhere, does not matter where on this line. And also, when I drill in, it might seem simple and trivial, but when I drill in, it's across all columns. It's not a single cell, because I work with and deploy a lot of other reporting and budgeting tools. And I love how Manager Porter and Prospero allow you to drill in across multiple columns all at once, including transaction detail. Otherwise, many other applications only is a single cell. And I'm just going to show you again the account level and transaction level. And then you might have some additional vendor and customer information. Now, two key concepts that I'm now going to show you inside the application related to that is when you run the report, this being the first of two key concepts of what detail level you run it for. So at minimum, I recommend running every report for financial account level, and usually I shy away from transaction level, especially if I have a larger company and database, because normally I don't need to scrutinize transactions when I'm running tons of reports during preliminary and before I've done my month-end close. But once I know my figures are right, yeah, turn it on, transaction level, and just a little heads up again, that might take a little bit longer, but usually not too much. The second key concept behind drilling into the reports, especially seeing additional columns, is I'm going to come now, here's the row being used, this one called income statement, and we saw in my lead and remarks, I can easily see all the row column trees used with my reports. I'm going to open up now the column using this icon to the right. And one of the key things is looking at these column types, like looking to the left, a financial dimension column is simply grabbing data from your general ledger, either actual or budget, like you see on the second line here, what's called a book code. We additionally have calculated columns, like maybe a variance, like you see in this current example. And then third and finally, one of the other little tips and advantages is the ability to link to Excel. And I might have a worksheet column type to accomplish that function. Now, finally, the key concept that I want to really emphasize is when we saw additional transaction level, these are additional columns that were shown when I drilled into that third transaction level. These attribute columns do not show in your first two levels of financial account. And looking at this field, about everything I tell you today will not depend on what general ledger you're on. However, this might be one rare field, like if I'm Great Plains versus Exapta or Solomon, yeah, this field might differ slightly because these are really just grabbing different fields from my journal entry screen and database that are a little unique based on your Dynamics ERP system. All right, so as I segue away from this, there's again our transaction detail. I'm going to click on this icon to go back to the report I ran, and maybe two things here. Earlier, I mentioned the great row, column, or tree approach to Manager Porter, and now most have moved to Prospero, and there's even a report conversion taking all of your FRX and Manager Porter reports into Prospero, and each of those have this nice little report inventory. So when I mention Excel Hell sort of applications and add-ons, I love how Manager Porter and Prospero allow me to inventory easily all of these reports here. I can come up and click on one of these headings, like I just clicked on the row definition heading, and now all my reports are sorted by the row being used. And if I scroll down, notice here I have several reports all sharing and using the same single row format. I can see who last modified it, edited it. So for great audit purposes, as I was just talking with some public companies that are being audited for Sarbanes-Oxley, so great, Manager Porter Prospero gives you this even Prospero, we've even added activity logs like who changed what and when, but this only gives me the last change. All right, so that icon I was just in was this yellow open folder. I'm then seeing a complete inventory of all my reports, and I can look individually at only rows or only columns. You see check marks of those that are being used in the report, or this one not. All right, one of the key things for this first report, and I'll have you make sure you leverage, is our good old reporting trees. So I'm back in the client viewer. I can come up here and open up the administration unit. Now notice too, let me role play that I'm a manager, you're my boss, and I want to explain a variance that I know of. So here in my sales, notice here I was under variance. So what I can do is I can right mouse click and add a comment for this. And I'll say, sorry, lost the customer ABC contract. Or hopefully it's good news. Maybe I won the contract. Now what you're going to see once I add a comment or note to the account is a nice little icon indicator of such. I can hover on top of that memo or note to review it. And then additionally, over here to the right on what we call our detail pane versus to the left, what we call the navigation pane. But here to the right on the detail pane, I can see what user, like Derek, the administrator. It normally is your name, like Derek or Sally, since I'm logged in as a generic user. And then time, date, stamp, who, and what node. And then I can further review it. Now, additionally, that might be one way to share information on a sort of line-by-line basis. Now, what I also want to share with you is how you can add financial footnotes to this report. Because how about this administration department? This might be the manager, Derek. He's in San Diego, California. Hey, sun and surf are up. Let's go to the beach. So these are nice little financial footnotes we can add to our report. So what I want to do is I want to return back to the designer. Earlier, I opened up the column definition of this report using this icon. I'm now going to open up the tree icon. And it might be 2 or 3 remarks at high level I want to mention to this. One is when we last looked at those comments, like here is Derek in charge of administration. What I can do is in this field, what is called the additional text, you can have up to 10 line of texts that are maybe footnotes unique to that unit, and each line of text can have up to 256 characters. And how I add those footnotes to the report might be, and most commonly, as I go back to the report, the most common way to add those financial footnotes is in your report header and footer. And usually I put those in the footers. Notice here it says at unit text 1. So this button here is where I can have report headers. That might be my company name. When I'm looking at the tree units, it might say Department A, Accounting, Department B, Finance. And those first two, like company and the tree unit, those are default ones whenever you add a new report. And then finally, I have in this text fields, here's where I could add text line 1 through 10 of my tree, like I'm showing you there in the background, maybe 3 lines of text that I'm utilizing for maybe financial footnotes unique to that department, like, oh, here's where we made an accrual due to this in this month. So I don't always have to add notes if they're more common ones that you want to maybe do it a more overall department basis instead of a line by line basis that I started with. That again is what we call tree unit text. I'm going to come up here to the report tab. I use this icon to open up the tree, just like these icons respectively. For this report, we'll open up the row, column, or tree just like below. When I return to the tree, there's the tree text we were just looking at. Now, secondly, when I mentioned there is what's called tree security, we earlier looked at folder security, like the board of directors folder that has a balance sheet and cash flow restricting it. But here is now tree text, because maybe I run this report once for all of you, but when you open up Bob, you only get to see Department A, or you, Sally, only get to see Department B. So I'm going to example 2 users, starting with the top summary unit that I'm on, as we see here to the left in the yellow folder. I'm going to come up here and click this button called Users and Groups. I'm going to choose Charlie. He or she might be our CFO. And Charlie, my intent is to have that user be able to see and have security to all child units. So once I click OK, I started in what we call a summary unit with this yellow folder. Now whenever Charlie, or better yet, if I add this group, I'm double clicking the same thing, users groups button. How about now, better yet, I create a group inside Manager Porter called accounting. Same thing, maybe better yet, accounting as people come go, I'm going to do it simply at the group level now. So I've just added it. And then thereafter, yep, one last click, users groups. How about Nick is in charge of this department? So then when Nick opens up this report, that's all they'll be able to have access to. Tree security. Now, a couple other little high-level remarks is if ever you are spreadsheet linking or even creating a new tree, let me even demonstrate that since it literally takes seconds. I'm going to create a new reporting tree, and then under Edit, Insert Reporting Units from Dimensions, this is how I can quickly and automatically build trees. So I'm going to build it on just our segment 1. Now in our demonstration database, we've named our 3 segments generically, but in your Manager Porter, it would probably read something like segment 1 is our department, segment 2 is our account. That usually we define those revenue expenses or balance sheet accounts in the row definition, not the tree. Or maybe segment 3 is our project. Normally it would read such, but we've named them generically, so you can fill in the blank for your type of structure. And within literally seconds, I'm now grabbing data for one single company. You see here, segment 1, all the different departments got brought in and their respective names that we have in the general ledger. And if I ever need to add a new summary unit in the tree, how about Derek is in charge of administration and sales? And what I'd like is a new summary report of those two. So what I can simply do is 2 steps. I'm going to right mouse click insert a unit. I'm focusing on a single company for right now, but I'll talk about multi-company in just a second. New summary report or unit. I'll just give it its name. And then finally, that's step 1. Just like Excel, I right mouse click to insert a unit. And now step 2 is I'm going to simply drag and drop maybe these units that roll up into this. So my second step, I do so in my graphical view. I held down the control key, I highlighted those 2 units, and I'm simply going to drag and drop. Now, if I run the report, I'll have the best of both worlds. Department A and B individually I can see, but now them combined in literally seconds. Now looking at this company field, one of my favorite things too is with Manager Porter and Prospero, you can do multi-company consolidations with a breeze. Even better yet in Prospero, because in Prospero you can wildcard the company. However, in Manager Porter you cannot wildcard the company. So here in this little pick list, if you're a multi-company like our database environment is, I might then have a tree, and then I think I have one here that I already have a consolidated company. I'll just open up here. That might grab company A, B, C, and these companies may not have a dimension filter. However, sometimes, like the earlier tree that I was in and demonstrating, let me go back to it to clarify. I could have also, for a company, breaking it down further by, let's say, department or location as applicable. But in this other multi-company consolidation tree, maybe it's only for my balance sheet. Maybe I do not need to break it out by department. By all means, I like to confirm you can break out U.S. company by the location departments as need be. Okay. Let me now show you briefly too. Another thing that I favor, I'm just going to close out as I'm probably opening up a bunch of items, is one generic phrase is just really the ability to do presentation quality reports. I'm probably not going to spend too much time on that, but here you can see I can add underlines, font, shading, format, graphs, even logos to this report. As I'm looking at my little cheat sheet list on my printout here to make sure I quote some of the original agenda items that unfortunately I lost connection to that live Excel file when I dropped my power connection. Now let me share with you briefly One of my favorite things of these applications using rows, columns, trees is, or are, the ability to slice and dice my report data. Because every report that I look at, there might be some things I like about it, but some things I don't. Now, this first report is where really I'm taking my department and or companies using the tree. So here I'm going to go back, meaning my advantages here I'm quoting is here I'm looking at all departments drilling in, I'm looking at just administration, or I'm looking at just Department B, and then I can send it to all you, this one report, using tree security. I love that about it. I also love I can have a lot of detailed rows, a lot of columns for actual budget variance, rolling 12-month, etc. However, what I don't like about this report is I do not get a nice little comparative of data side by side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to segue. I'm now going to open up maybe the second report of 3. That first report of 3 is where we took our departments in our tree. But how about let me take now departments, or you can interchange it with location, division, or companies side by side in columns. Now what I'm clicking is, here's my infamous generate report button where I'm going to grab the latest, greatest postings from my general ledger database. But another tip is this icon here to the left pulls up my last ran report, because sometimes I don't need to rerun it always. And once this renders, I'll call this report number 2. And things that I like about this are my good old data side by side. And sometimes too, I'll chuckle about the Microsoft demo data being a little sparse and dated, like 2017, and not a lot of postings, but notice the column headings, department or company, side by side, great. Now, let me turn my attention to, how about if I'm a McDonald's franchise owner and I have 50 stores? If I try to throw all those 50 stores in a column, I cringe. I do not like those reports because I having to scroll to the right or left too much. I really can't see nice cohesive stuff all on one page. So that's my transition to take basically now, first of all, report 1, departments in the tree. Second report we're seeing right now, departments in column. And now the third one is I'm going to now bring those departments or locations or companies into my rows. I'm going to click this icon to pull up my last ran report to save time. Lo and behold, you're going to now see in rows, not revenue expenses, because revenue expenses are going to be in columns. I'll repeat that. You're now going to see revenue, COGS, expenses in your column. I can still drill in to see the detail. So there's the account level detail. And if I ran it with transaction level, I could go back, which here in the top left, I will go back. Now, additionally, what I've done was I've sorted this net income. Here's my best person in McDonald's franchise. Here's my worst one. So I can immediately focus my eyes on praise or areas I need to focus my attention on, along with the transaction detailed event or customer. So I'm now going to go back to the designer. I'm going to show you 2 key steps whenever you sort data on the report. Step 1 is I open up the column definition. And first of all, what I'm utilizing are dimension filters. Like this column here for revenue. These are all those accounts which in our demonstration database, segment 2 is our account segment. So in account 2, those accounts that begin with a 4 are my revenues. Or maybe here, those accounts that begin with a 5 are my cost of goods sold. So in my first report, I was filtering on department, which was segment 1. But this example number 2, filtering on my main account or natural for revenue, expense, or balance sheet. Continuing, especially on the sort, 2 key steps. The first is in my column definition, you can choose any column I'm sorting. I chose column G like George for my net dollar. And let me just show you again that output report. Net income, column G like George, I'm sorting. Now the second key step, after I've determined which column I want sorted, is I'm going to go back to my report and then the row definition of. And now here is basically one row that has really 3 fields populated. Field 1 of 3 is the format code, and at the bottom you have 4 choices to sort it either ascending or descending order or by absolute value. That's the first of 3 fields you choose on this one row that's hidden and not shown on the report. The second field of 3 is here. I specify the range of rows I want sorted, and usually those are the rows that have data here, like you see the link to the right. Now, third and finally, it's this field here where I'm defining column G like George, my net income dollar that I want sorted. Ta-da! Okay. One of my next favorite features, and please do take advantage of the question area. I might not be able to, with maybe the 5 or 10 minutes we lost with the power outage, get to your questions. I'm even just going to peek real quick here. I see a couple of comments saying, great, Derek, I did not know about that feature, so thanks for the first little remark or two. Another one said, fun. Okay, let me continue. I'll maximize these remaining 10 minutes to give you some more information. Would be the check rows and data integrity in the report. And I'm going to pull up this one here, what's called missing and duplicate accounts. And the first thing is I'm a little spoiled. Since, yeah, we helped develop and support these products for all these years, but these are still 20-year-old products, but still great. However, in their income statement detail, notice these expenses. Many times you have to show these all individually. I'm spoiled because in the release Prospero, instead of having all these expense accounts in Prospero, you have only one simple summary account. Let's call it total expenses, which might be a range of all my 6,000 series accounts. I might have one row that's a range, which means I never have to update that range of that roll-up of total expenses, all my 6 prefix accounts, and I expand to automatically show it. But in your manager portal world for income statement detail, you have to individually show these and individually add them. However, my little tip is, well, let me maximize your current use and knowledge of this tool. So the oldest tip and trick in the book is to always add check rows to your manager portal row formats. In this case, here is where I'm formulating net income from all my detail up above. I'm keeping my fingers crossed that I'm accurate, but I can ensure data integrity by simply adding a check row that grabs all of my segment 2, which is our main account, all revenue expenses, which is the range 4,000 to 8,999. I usually make that row non-print in this print control field to not clutter my report. And then finally, I would have an out of balance row here to share me if I'm out of balance. If I'm out of balance, then what I would want to do is I want to find where I'm missing an account or duplicating an account. Again, in Prospero, we don't have to worry about all these steps, but they're not too many. So usually what I do is if I'm out of balance, I'll come up here and delete these check accounts along with my formula. Otherwise, I might get a couple of errors. And there's 2 ways to find that needle in the haystack. The needle I'm referring to is maybe I missed an account or maybe I duplicated an account. Well, the first thing of 2 for missing accounts is in the row definition. I'm under Tools, Missing Account Analysis. What this is now going to do is it's going to comb across all my row definitions. And you see here in the background, I'm in this one row called IS Detail Missing. So I have the top half of the screen. This is what I'll call row number 1, income statement, row number 2, balance sheet. I'm going to scroll down to the one called Missing and Duplicates. And I'll just choose one of these for a quick little more illustration here. And then once I choose that row format, it will then say, oh, you've missed then these accounts. So there's where it finds maybe more than one needle in the haystack that I've missed. Maybe these might be old accounts that I'm no longer posting to. And then a lot of times what I'll do is I'll just copy this out to Excel, this bottom area, and I'll paste it here in the background into column J. Like you see, these values are accounts that I might have missed to see if they truly have a value. And that's the first thing of 2. I was in the row under Tools, Missing Account Analysis. The second way to find those needles is in the report definition on the Output tab. There's a little check mark here, which is normally not turned on. I'm on the Output tab, this check mark here called Report Duplicate Accounts. And what I'll do is I'm going to open up the last ran version of this, and these duplicates will be shown only in the client viewer, not the web viewer. Another reason why I prefer it. So as I open up the client viewer, I'm going to go here under View, Duplicate Accounts. And that's where I can see some of the other needles that in this case, I might have duplicated into my row definition. So it says, hey, this account number 5150 duplicated 3 times on row A, B, and C. And the reason why it has parenthesis 2 on the same row is maybe 2 departments have that, but really 2 rows, I have that account number. Oops, darn, fat fingered that. That's how I can correct it. At least in Manager Porter's world, I have to do an extra couple of steps. Great. Let me see now, as I'm going to tail end with a couple of final remarks, is at month end, how about I'm going to send all of you, my managers on this call, 3 reports. Actual versus budget, rolling 12-month, and a third one. So what I can do is I can create a nice report group of all those. So you see here me in the lower left, I'm under report groups. I can easily right mouse click and create a new one here in literally seconds here. Excuse that extra little click here. I'm going to come here under new report group. I'm going to give it a name like test, and then I simply click on this add button, and then I'm going to grab report 1, 2, and 3. After I've added multiple reports, I can now run these all in one fell swoop for a single report date and year. I can run these all for a consistent detail level. And finally, if I look at this group distribution tab, I can then come up here in my library pick list, because maybe I've closed the books, I've confirmed my figures, so maybe I'm now going to output this to my August folder. So I now have a nice little archive of those reports. I'm now sharing with you a report group where you can run multiple reports all at once. Now, I always get asked the question, hey, Derek, can I output and send these all to Excel or send these all to the printer? My answer for Manager Porter is no, sorry, but for Prospero, yes. And I got that question actually yesterday, so that's fresh in my mind. Another thing that I'm just going to talk about high level, because we usually run out of time as there's action-packed a ton of features I want to share with you, is the ability for some Excel linking. So let me just give a little food for thought in that regard. So yes, we're going to grab data from your general ledger, different companies and departments, but I want to show you this one report that I want to maybe include headcount or units sold. As I render this report, you'll see a couple of those lines I just quoted, like units sold or headcount, and I kept it very abbreviated, like you see here. Units sold from Excel. The top line's revenue expense from my general ledger, the bottom from Excel, and then here might be one of your flavors, and then here might be a file format that I'm grabbing maybe single data, or I can grab data if my months were in rows. We have different syntax if your data is in rows versus columns. And then when I promised you some of the training and user guides, I have some nice little training guide and reports for Excel linking I'll be shared to share with you. Second example might be where I link to different multiple sheets. The first one was just a single sheet, but there's 2 ways to link to Excel. If you want to grab data like budgets or units specifically for department A and B, then yeah, we can do so. And that's what we call the separate method, if you're grabbing data from separate Excel sheets. All right, let me start wind down here. This is one of my concluding slides. I'm going to take in just a second, see if any questions came in the queue, but oftentimes people are a little shy. So once again, please don't hesitate to email me or call me if you have any questions down the road. Secondly, if it's something that might need a little bit 3-dimensional look within your system, I or another consultant could on complimentary do a 1-hour little dial-in with you, like using GoToMeeting that we're doing today. And third, if you need the training and user guides, I'll be more than sure to pass that along to you. And you probably saw this event through our website. And then twice a year, and I wanted to personally invite you, is twice a year we have our user forums, one in the spring, and now we're going to have one next week in our fall time frame. And basically what these are are 2 full days, like here next week on September 22nd is our first day on the Microsoft products. And it's about 7 sessions, 1 hour in length each, which takes a lot of these trainings much further. So we record those as well to share, all free for knowledge, tips, and tricks to share. And on day 2, for Prospero, that many of the Microsoft Manager Portal and Forecaster people have transitioned. So I see a few of the call today that are in midst of that transition right now. So hope to see you at a future event like these in the future. And let me now go back to the question queue, just see if anything came in. I see a couple of thank you remarks, and I'll thank you as well for joining us today. And again, my apology for the power outage, but that was out of my control. But otherwise, have a great rest of your day, and hopefully we'll see you at a future event. And I'll email those, pass along this recording, PowerPoint, and other information. So have a nice day.